Diamond, Diamond.
A precious gem of the most valuable kind. When pure, it is clear.
Diamond, Diamond.
A family name bringing traditions of love, hard work, and moral values.
This is the Diamond Education Podcast with my mom and dad, John and Kelly England.
Welcome to the Diamond Education Podcast with John and Kelly England, your host. We are here to help you find the most valuable education for your child. And today I get to interview John.
Yeah.
And it'll be super fun. But we wanted to talk about something. And John kind of wanted to get it off his chest and out there and kind of as part of the healing process. So
this podcast will be a little bit different. It's not going to be probably as upbeat as some of our others because I think it's a sad story a little bit, but it's also a good story too, with what happened, and just kind of talk about what happened about a year ago and why I am no longer in public education. And
so John was an educator for 14 years, was a teacher, and then it was a principal for about 4 years.
5 years.
5 years. And then last year, about January, he made a change, and we're going to talk about what happened and why the change today. So John, you were a teacher for about how many years now?
I was a teacher for 7 years.
7 years. And you taught what grades?
I taught 5th and 6th grade. Yeah.
And he was an awesome teacher.
Yeah, I really did enjoy being a teacher. I loved working with kids. I chose to work in a Title I school, which means that it's a low income school. That was the population I was really interested in working with. And it was
near and dear to your heart, that population.
Oh, so for sure. Yeah.
John grew up in that type of situation.
Yeah, I grew up in a low income home. We were on food stamps as a kid. I was in 5th grade. I spent the year sleeping in a foam pull-out couch in my sister's basement because we were evicted from our home. So I totally understand, I guess, that population and where they're coming from a lot more. It was the reason I got into education is because I wanted to make a difference in the lives of students that were in a similar situation that I was.
Yeah. And then he decided he wanted to be a principal.
Yeah, I did that so that I could, in my mind, I thought, I can make so much of an impact as a teacher. But I felt like I could maybe have a higher impact as a principal on the lives of students and make a bigger impact and a bigger change in the world, improving education. So back in 2017, 2018, so we had somebody come in who was the professor of gender studies at the University of Utah. So this gender studies professor came in and we did this training, I guess I'd call it, where we talked about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. And the thing that really didn't sit well with me at that point is at the end of this training, the superintendent got up and said, "These are not political words." And I sat there and I thought, no, whether you want them to or not, they've been politicized, And so I didn't really agree with it. And with some of my colleagues, I expressed some of my frustrations there. And there was just some things that kind of continued to happen that I just didn't agree with. Mm-hmm. That was happening within the schools or surrounding this idea of diversity, inclusion, and equity. It became less about actually helping kids learn to read and do math and more about other things.
Fast forward to
COVID-19
hitting.
So when COVID-19 hit, there were a lot of things that happened that school year. I didn't agree with the schools necessarily shutting down, but I also, looking back, that March to the end of the year, I think people were trying to do the best they can. It's what happened after that, coming back into that school year where things started to happen. I was like, that doesn't make sense. So for example, that school year coming back, parents weren't allowed to come into the building for basically the entire school year, or on a very limited basis, they were allowed to come in. And it was just, I don't know. I just didn't feel right because, parents being in education, I think, is such an important part of what was going on. And, I just noticed that aspect and it just didn't sit well with me. And there were a lot of other political things that were happening not necessarily within the school district necessarily, but just in the nation and in the state at large. And then come that school year afterwards, the Utah State Board of Education, they started looking at their transgender policy and had made some proposals. That was kind of, I guess I would say, the beginning of the end for public education for me. And so
and keep in mind that we have children in a close district that things were happening to them in the classroom. So, and we know these districts do similar things, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, so there was multiple things happening where our kids weren't being taught the things they should and things like that. And John realizing these things were being taught in his district as well, you know?
Yeah.
So then we started looking into policy.
Yeah. Well, and that was actually last year was the year that we chose to begin homeschooling our children.
Yeah.
And found Ascend for Kate.
Yeah.
Because there were things changing in the public education system that we didn't agree with. And it wasn't fitting our children.
Well, and John was having a hard time. We were at that time like, we need to look at something for him because
I didn't agree
he
with
wasn't
it.
aligning.
I couldn't continue to do that. And so we began looking at.
He was having a struggle with a lot of things going on.
Yeah. So, but in that September board meeting last year, 2021, I chose to make a public statement to the Utah State Board of Education. One of the things that they were looking at with their transgender policy that I really did not agree with was this idea that if a child begins to transition at school, that the school had no legal obligation to inform the parents. And I just felt like that was the school district taking parental rights away. And I didn't agree with that at all. I felt like that was just a horrible thing for them to be doing. And so I made a comment saying, don't do this. That puts parents and schools at odds with one another, as opposed to letting them work together for what's best for the child. And I just didn't agree with them with that happening. So I made my public comment.
Well,
I said as much.
Before you made the comment, you introduced yourself and said, I am a principal in Weber School District, but he said, I am not speaking for Weber School District.
Yep.
The New Salt Lake Tribune got a hold of it, misquoted him.
Yeah, it wasn't really a quote, but they tried to paraphrase what I said, but it was a complete misrepresentation of my words.
Yeah.
You know, and that
was got back the point of who cares about the Salt Lake Tribune, but that got back to my school district. And in mid-September last year, I got pulled in for an investigation into my comments that I had made. I had done most of the things right. I had taken time off from work to make my public comments, but in my mind, and this is where I should have done it differently, but in my mind, I thought, I'm just going to quickly do it from my office because it's only going to be an hour, and I shouldn't have done that. That was a violation of a lot of the things that we're supposed to be doing. But anyway, but they investigated me and pulled me in, investigated the comments. I shared with them everything that I did, and they pulled, I ended up getting, it's called a letter of expectation from them. And that was towards the end of September like 21st or 25th, somewhere in that time. But it was interesting in that letter, when the letter was presented to me, I was told that, in the letter, it basically said, I can't make public comments and refer to myself as an administrator, and especially not one in Weber School District and things like that. But then the person giving me the letter said, and you probably shouldn't even wear a tie if you decide to make public comment. And I was like, no, well, what's going on here? You don't get control of those things. So I actually wrote a rebuttal which is part of the letter of expectation process. I wrote a rebuttal to it saying, listen, I understand that I can't use school resources to make public comment. But I reserve the right to
have the ability to make a public comment on anything that is of interest to the public, and to education specifically. I didn't reference that aspect either, but I just, that was something that, or the dress aspect, I didn't address that necessarily.
Which is a scary thought if we're trying to suppress
yeah,
the educators that have opinions on the other side.
Yep.
They're not really suppressing the ideas on the other side, but
yeah,
we need to, I would think we would want to hear all educators' opinions
I would think
weighed
so too. I
in
think
on
that's,
policy that is affecting
yeah,
who they work for, right?
Yep.
So, but
yeah. So I had done that, and I mean, technically it's not a disciplinary action, but it sure felt disciplinary to me when it happened. But anyway, the week of fall break, I had a guardian come in who, with their child, and their child had tested positive for COVID-19, but was asymptomatic. And at the time, the COVID policies were changing quite a bit. And she asked me, can her child come to school? She was concerned he was behind in reading. And she said, can he come? And I said, I think it's up to you. And that was a violation of the COVID policies. Previous to that, actually, I got to go back a little bit, because there were some signs that were given to the schools that we were asked to put up. And the signs were put up on the front door, and I just hated them. I don't know. It changed the feeling of the school, and from my perspective of, we're worried about this disease as opposed to we're worried about helping your child learn and grow. And so I took the signs down and I threw them away. But anyway, I let this child come to school who had tested positive and was asymptomatic. I found out, I think the next day, that no, he had tested positive, and the policy is if they test positive, they have to stay home. So we sent him home that next day. Well, lo and behold, after fall break, we came back and the COVID-19 numbers started to skyrocket. And then on October 19th, your mom passed away. And so I actually left Tuesday before really a lot of the COVID cases came in. And the numbers really shot up really high. And
keep in mind they were all on break.
They had all just been on break for the
So,
previous, 4 or 5 days. And but anyway, they were shooting up. And I got a phone call. It was either Wednesday or Thursday of that week. I think it was Thursday night, asking me to come in for another investigation about what's going on with COVID-19 at my school. And I came in, and they began kind of interviewing me in the process. And, I was tore up because, I was helping support you. You just lost your mom suddenly. And, they asked me about the signs. They said, did you take them down? I told them, yes, I took them down. They said, what did you do with them? And this is the part that I really regret, is I told them that I put them in my office instead of throwing them away. And it was a dumb lie. But it didn't change the fact that I took them down. I told them I took them down. I admitted to that. And so
I think that's what's hard when he came and talked to me about it. Of course I was disappointed in that lie,
yeah,
but
but that
and we won't justify it. It was wrong. He says out of all the things, he wished he had held on to his integrity with that, he wish, it was an accident with the asymptomatic kid. And, going back, would he put the signs back up? Probably not.
No, I'd probably still have taken them down.
We really believe each person should have chose what they do with COVID. If they wanted to wear a mask. If you didn't, you didn't. If every individual should have been able to choose what was best for them and for their family, the parents. It's like they took that and exaggerated everything.
They really did latch onto that aspect of that one little part. And I don't know if I can say rightly so, but they latched onto that, and they ended up by November, first part of November, they told me that my options were that I was going to either be reduced from a principal to a teacher, or I could resign. And so it was actually about a year ago right now that I chose to resign from education.
Yeah.
And
And it wasn't an easy choice.
it wasn't,
It took, because he did love to teach,
Yeah.
and
and I was,
he loves a lot of the people in Weber School, even the ones
Yeah.
that disagree with him, he loves,
yeah,
but you were looking at a change,
Yeah.
we no longer aligned with
we had
the
already decided before
public
I was investigated
education.
that second time that I was not going to be in public education
we
much
were gonna
longer.
make a change.
Yeah.
Our
And
model
in
of
fact, I
education
remember
was
a
changing.
conversation that I had with a colleague in the summer, even before the transgender policies or things like that. I'd gone to lunch with this person and had said, like, I'm looking at some different options, maybe starting a charter school or something like that. And this
Yeah.
person's like, yeah, you're not a long-termer. So it was a
Yeah.
really interesting concept. And one of the things that really like kind of stood out to me is the fact that I did feel like that my political ideology, I guess I would say, my political leanings were a detriment to me in the public education system.
Well, and your beliefs.
Yeah, my
Your
personal beliefs, my
your
religious
moral
beliefs,
beliefs,
yeah, what's right and wrong, and who should be in charge of the kids, even really was one of those
being
things.
challenged,
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, from a very start, when you were a teacher, you were against unions, and
I was, yeah, that was
You
that was an
know,
interesting
and things like
story.
that.
Because my first year, I joined the union because that's what you did as a teacher. Is you signed up to be a teacher, and then you joined the teachers union, right? And I started getting the NEA's magazine every month and looking through it, and I'm like, reading through it, and I just like, I don't agree with any of this.
or most of it,
Like I don't even remember agreeing with any of it.
yeah.
I just remember there were some ideologies that they were pushing that I was like, A, what does this have to do with education? And
Yeah.
B, like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that aspect. And so actually I remember it was like October, maybe November, I went to the human resources at the district and said, can I cancel my union membership? Like, I don't want to be part of them anymore.
Mhm.
And but I wasn't able to do that until like the open enrollment time the next year. And so I ended up canceling it. So I was only a member of the union my very first year, and then I was out. I remember actually we had some of the union representation wanted to come and talk to me about why I wasn't in the union. And I sat down with them and I had a conversation. I said, well, here's one big reason that I'm not in is we can't choose where we send our kids to school. We are assigned to a school, and that's the school that we have to go to. And I don't agree with that. Parents should have I told them this, and this is maybe 2 or 3 years into my career, but I told them, like, parents should have the opportunity to choose where they send their kids to school.
Yeah.
That was my belief then. It's still my belief now, and I haven't been presented with anything that really has taken me off of that belief, that because parents do know their kids best. But anyway, but that's why I'm no longer in public education. I really felt that it was moving away from parental control, parental rights. I got out of it sooner than I anticipated. I wasn't necessarily, it wasn't on my terms. But I had already made the choice to get out.
But I would say the Lord's hand was in it.
Oh, for
we
sure.
could have stayed comfortable, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're going to change. But it was
Yeah.
like,
You
when they wanted, like, how about you be a teacher, right? Like, in my heart, I was like, no, we're done.
Like,
we
that doesn't-
we
it
don't
didn't-
believe in this model anymore.
it didn't fit.
But there was like peace, like, you need to be done.
Yeah.
And we're going to be we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it
So-
was interesting. We had a conversation a few weeks ago, and you said, I do wish we would have gotten a lawyer. But one of the things that I told you, do you remember?
Yeah. If
Yes.
you would have gotten a lawyer, he might have saved my job, and I wouldn't be where I am now.
It was a hard thing, but I'm actually glad that I am where I am right now.
Well, and if you had stayed, you would have had a target on your back.
And if I would, yeah, I don't know what it would have been like. I probably would have been called in a third time that year. Like, I mean, I was already planning for the upcoming legislative session to go down. I knew that there was going to be a education choice
We've been
bill
involved in legislation and
I was
policies.
going to be going down and advocating for that bill. I probably would have been called in again saying, "Hey, what are you doing?"
We're fortune telling, but anyway,
Maybe
but
we
the
are,
thing,
but-
it was, I think it was no longer a model we believed in.
Yeah.
And what would you say? Our eyes have been opened, even just to all of our podcasts,
Yeah.
to all the education options that are available and out there, and that we should continue to support that each child is different,
Yeah.
you know, and families should get to choose what is best for their child.
And it's been a great journey. I've really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, we're happy.
Yep.
The Lord's blessed us.
Yep. Now you get to ask me the question we always end with.
So, John, first of all, John, I want to ask you, what is education then? What have you discovered?
So one of the things that I've really liked is the Latin root of education, educare. And I've just learned this recently, but it means to draw out, which I really love. And when we look at it from our religious beliefs, the idea of being able to draw out a remembrance of who we were is really like my idea of what education is. And, you know, being members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Mormons, that idea of remembering that we came from God and that we're just remembering things, like we have these experiences of knowledge and stuff that we had. And education, I really do feel is this idea of drawing out our true selves of who we were when we were with God here on earth, and learning to trust him. And so I really, that's my idea of education.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And then, who is your hero from history and why?
So somebody that I've really learned a lot about recently is a young German boy by the name of Helmut Hübner. And this is a young man. He is the youngest person executed by the Nazi regime for defying the Nazi regime. So he wasn't a Jew taken into captivity, but he was the youngest person who resisted the Nazis that they executed. And so he actually went and he and his friends would listen to broadcasts from Britain and hear what was going on in the war, and realize that what they were being told by the Germans was not accurate. And so he began sharing that information with the rest of like the neighborhood and getting it out. Like they pasted it on like phone booths and on walls and things like that, and they got caught. But the thing I really love about it is in his story, he actually had, and he was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but there were members of his local congregation who were telling him that he should stop, that they need to just work together and do those things. We got some background, right? But that he should work with the Nazis because we believe in supporting the laws of the land or whatever. But he knew what was right, and he chose, even though it was hard and he was probably ostracized. But yeah, so just that idea of standing up for what's right, even though it's not popular and even though it's dangerous sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I want to add to your story. So John gets really down about that white lie and wants to kick himself. And the other day, I shared about my hero, Paul. If you look at a lot of heroes or figures in history, they had their moment, and it's not to justify, right? We need to admit, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that, right? But let's not shame ourselves. Get out in the battlefield again, get out there and go again. I think that's part of life. None of us are perfect. We make mistakes. Let's learn from it. I look at Peter, he denied Christ 3 times, right? But then look at the man he became. He was amazing before he messed up. and the man he became. Even Joan of Arc. If you look at a lot of figures in history, were they perfect all the time? No, only Christ was. But Christ took on that lie, right? So let's be that follower of Christ again. So I think one thing we learned in this is we mess up, but don't shirk your duties because of it. I always love become who the Lord has meant you to become. Fulfill your life mission.
I like that.
So, but
Anyway, but that's our podcast. So thanks for listening.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Diamond Education Podcast.
You can connect with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
At Diamond Education, DIMOND, or on our website, diamonded.com.